all right, as well as the explanation of the outcomes of projects. And then we are going to split into the two groups. So just take your theory books out, all right? Don't worry about your, we will be very careful not to get your identities on there without your permission. It will only be my face and the content, okay? So you can relax, you won't be on camera, okay? As such, they will maybe just have a screenshot from the back, but not your faces as such, all right? So relax. I'm going to start on time, 1:15, on your computer time. It's currently, wow, where did this happen now? It's currently 10 past, so in 5 minutes I'll start, okay? Get your theory books out. Time now to study with me, all right? Because you're going to have to study this in any event. I'll introduce for the video's sake myself just now and the course, all right? But get your books out. If you don't have books, get your content out, get your theory out, your note paper, so that you can take notes with me. Okay, Matti, I'm going to start. If there's latecomers, let's please just get them in, signing them, and then, because I think I've got all the screens. That's the idea. Okay. Students, welcome to the Information Administration 4 class for 17 March. What we are going to do tonight is two things, and we are going to upload this course on my tutor for you to revisit. Because I know students find the engagement with theoretical and practical concepts sometimes difficult. All right. So we are doing chapter 5 tonight, and then after we've finished with the theoretical component, I'll quickly do an outcome of our practical component, which is tutorial 3 for projects. All right. Let's first look, what are we going to do tonight? We are going to look at securing the enterprise and business continuity. Now, I know that we are working with two editions, the 7th edition of Turban, as well as the 8th edition. But I've compared the two editions. The review questions is exactly the same. All right? I also want you to note that you still have to do the mind map of the chapter and answer all the review questions for uploading it on my tutor. Are we all happy with that? All right? Yes, and please, people, we also want you to know to save this work on your memory stick. You know, you need to scan it, save it, and upload it then on the correct link. Okay, so basically what we are going to do is, I'm not going to go through this chapter here, the figures, because it doesn't mean anything to you. It doesn't mean anything to you. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to discuss the review questions with you and the goals of the chapter. Remember, you've asked me the question, where am I going to get the answers to this review questions? Yes, it will be incorporated with this video on my tutor, the answers to the questions. But you need to make sure that you work with a book and not only answer my questions as it is presented here, because it's not complete. It's a breakdown. It's not going to give me the background of the answer. All right, will you remember that? It's very, very important. Okay, so what is the goals of this chapter? The main goal of this chapter is to recognize the difficulties in managing information resources while learning how to reorganizing vulnerabilities and weaknesses of information security systems. All right, other goals also include distinguishing between your security measures, analyze disaster planning and recovery, as well as appreciating the need for business continuity and disaster recovery. One of your most important functions as an administrator of information is to make sure that the information is secure. All right, that's why it's so important that you understand security and everything that can threaten your security or your information in the organization. All right, so in section 1, we are going to look at data and enterprise security incidents. What happens? What can happen to your information in an organization? Also, we will look at some of the threats, and we will look at some of your fraud and computer-mediated crimes that can occur. We also look at some of the management practices where you come in, some of the things that you can do to avoid and also make sure that it doesn't occur, some of your network security issues, internal control and compliance management, as well as disaster recovery planning. And then the last section is about auditing and risk management. Okay, so it sounds like it is a very big component of your course, and it is a very long chapter, but I'm going to make it quick. I'm going to do the review questions with you in short. All right, remember just to work with the book. You need to make a summarization and of this chapter with the book. All right, so I'm on page 155. I'm going to work from the 7th edition. Just remember, it is in the 8th edition. Maybe just not on the same page, but it is there. I've made the comparison. All right. First of all, we're going to ask, why are cleanup costs after a single data breach? Now, they're using the information of InfoSec. Why is it so costly? Now, if you look at page 155, InfoSec is just a situation that occurred for security. There was a security breach. And why it was so costly is because they had to inform every single retailer, every single partner, every single customer individually in the company and in the organization or external to the organization about the security breach. That's why it was so costly. All right, so you can read what happened at InfoSec on page 155. Right, who are then the potential victims of a data breach? Also page 155. The potential victims, people, are often third parties, such as your customers, your patients, and your social network users. Also your credit card companies and your shareholders. That's the people that actually is hurt the most with information that is stolen or that is used illegally. All right. Another question is, what is time to explanation? You will see there's a lot of definitions in this chapter. The times to explanation is on page, also it's on page 158. If you look at your increasing vulnerability, page 158 says that information resources are distributed throughout the organization, and it's going beyond the internet and wireless technologies. So the time to explanation of today is that the most sophisticated spyware, as well as security viruses, the time that they actually hit the market is very short. So we need to update our security every time and our security resources so that we can actually protect our resources. Okay, so that's the time to explanation. And then a service pack is a software release that the applications release so that you can actually update your vulnerabilities or your system reliability and your program compatibility. Do you know Service Pack 1, 2, 3 of Windows that was released, Windows and Service Pack 1 for Windows 7? It is updates to the software, especially your operating system, to protect yourself against security breaches. Okay. Now we want to know what on page 160. What are the two causes of top causes of information problems at organizations? It's usually human errors, malfunctioning systems, and misunderstandings. That's on page 160. All right, and that has been identified by Fortune 100 companies. What are the causes of information problems at organizations? And it makes sense, doesn't it? Because if you are not sure what to do with information, you can maybe misinterpret it and maybe let it lie around so that other people can access it. Okay, so there's certain policies and things that needs to happen. Also malfunctioning systems. So we are looking at an acceptable use policy, which is very important in your organization, page 161. An acceptable use policy is also part of the internal control model. Your internal control model is on page 161. And there's 4 steps in this internal control model. And people, acceptable use policy is only one of those steps. All right? But I want you to understand the control model. Basically, the senior management commitment needs to be there. That's step 1. Then you need policies and training for staff members to be able to know what to do with information. Page 162, we need to have security procedures and enforce security on our information. And step number 4 is we need to talk about hardware and software to make sure that we can protect our information. All right. So acceptable use policy is something that you will be confronted with when you are entering your workplace. And if you are not aware of your user policy or acceptable use policy for internet and protection of information, you need to make sure that you understand that, or that you get hold of it in your company, so that you can make sure that you follow the correct procedures. Have you ever had training on security policies in your organization? Hands up. Is there anyone that can say they did training for you at your organization, telling you what to do with information, how to handle it? Some students say yes. Yes, that's very good, because that is one of the policies, and that is one of some of the things where people can get into trouble, you know, internal audit or something if you don't handle it correctly. Okay. So then we want to look at the 3 examples of an unintentional threat. All right. Now, usually these people exploit human errors. The hackers and the crackers, they know that you will make errors. And that's why human errors, environmental hazards, and computer system failures is usually exploited. And they are usually looking for that loopholes in the organization. All right, so that's an unintentional threats on page 163. Then we also want to define and give examples of intentional threats, also on page 163. Now, an intentional threat is the theft of data at the bottom of page 163, students. It's the theft of data, the inappropriate use of data, and the theft of mainframe computer time, equipment, programs, or the deliberate manipulation in handling, entering, processing, transferring, programming data, labor strikes, riots, sabotage, malicious damage. There's so many factors that can be intentional to actually harm your resources, all right, or your information. And who's doing these intentional problems? Who's doing this intentional destructions to your data? Usually it's called, they are called hackers and crackers, and that's on page 164. The malicious damage to computers, the deliberate manipulation is usually done by hackers or crackers. The definitions is on page 164. What is a hacker? A hacker is the term used to describe someone who gains unauthorized access to a system. So you must be able to differentiate for me between a hacker and a cracker is a malicious hacker who may represent a serious problem for the computer. They also call it a black hat hacker, and it's referred to as a criminal, a cyber criminal. All right? So there's your hackers and your crackers. All right? Hackers and crackers may involve unsuspected insiders in the crimes, and this is a strategy called social engineering. You must make sure that you don't answer emails that may be of suspicious nature, or get yourself into a situation where you can be the product of social engineering, and you fall for the trick used by criminals. All right. So usually a crime server, also on page 164, is a definition that we want to explore. A crime server is a server used to store stolen data for use in communication crimes. All right, so FinGen discovered the crime servers while running its real-time code inspection. This is an example in industry how they actually found out that the information is being relayed to a server where it's actually used for illegal communication or, you know, spamming. Okay. Methods. There we are. We are looking at methods of attacks on computer facilities. And before I get there, that's on page 164. What is attacked? What is attacked in my organization? There are many methods of attack, and the new ones appear regularly. All right? In this section, we look at some of those methods, especially data tampering and programming attacks. All right? And if we look at those two definitions, you must see that tampering is overshadowed by attacks, because tampering can have a snowball effect if you are working with data that accumulates. Okay? So we are looking at tampering, which is extremely serious because it may not be detected. And then there is the definitions, or the 3 types of malware. Malware on page 165. 3 types of malware is your viruses, your worms, and your Trojan horses, as well as your remote administration Trojans. That's all types of malware. Do you know that you need to install software to minimize your attacks for malware? There is security policies in your organization updating your software to protect you against malware. All right. I'm not going to read through all these definitions. There's not really time. You need to find it on page 165 and be able to give me a definition of a virus, a worm, a Trojan horse, as well as a random or remote administration Trojan. Then there's definitions of botnets. Botnets, and why is there a risk involved with botnets? On page 166, a botnet then is a collection of bots. Now, if you know that it's a computer software robot, it's a software program. And those infected computers is called zombies. And they can be controlled and organized into a network of zombies on the command of a remote botmaster. So in other words, people are remotely accessing your information in your organization without you knowing it, using software, because your computer is maybe not protected with malware protection. Okay, so botnets are use infected computers, and they have the following threats. It's at the bottom of page 166. We have spyware, adware, spam, phishing, and DOS attacks. Those are 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 serious consequences of a botnet that is installed on your computer. All right. How can we defend ourselves against these software programs? So there are certain strategies in defense. Our strategies in defense on page 167 is basically not this question. I want you to understand there's 3 malware defenses. The malware defenses is anti-malware technology. There is intrusion detection systems, as well as intrusion prevention systems. And question 14 focuses on 2 of those 3 protection strategies. Now, your IDS is scan for unusual suspicious traffic on your computer systems in the organization network. And your IPS is designed to take immediate action, such as blocking or removing those traffic flow if any anomaly is detected. All right. In your acceptable use policy or in your security policy, your policy should explain what methods are using to minimize the malware attacks in your information. All right. Then we are going to go to another one that is a very contentious issue in any organization. It's fraud and occupational fraud. That's on page 168. All right, fraud. When a person uses his or her occupation for personal gain through deliberate misuse of the organization's resources or assets, it is called occupational fraud. All right, so in other words, students, if you are working in an organization, you can't use the organization's printers and use their paper for your personal business. You understand? It can be construed as occupational fraud. So there's a lot of examples listed on table 5.3. The types of organizational fraud is the operating management corruption, conflicts of interest, bribery, embezzlement or misappropriation of resources, financial reporting fraud, and accounting cycle fraud. You must familiarize yourself with these types of occupational threats that an organization can occur in an organization. And then identity threat. Identity threat is very important, yes? Resources, yes. For your own benefit, to make money out of it, for your own personal gain. For your own personal gain, all right.
Not for when you use it like
for your job? No.
Not for your job, for your own, like for my own personal use.
It can be construed as occupational fraud. Because you must be very careful and look at your computer security policy and your information security policy for all the organizations, protecting yourself in that regard. That's one of my duties, to teach you this. All right. Because people don't know it. That's a very good question, Lita. Very good question. So you must be very careful, read through your policy, and if you're not sure, you must ask permission. If you are not sure about resources that you are using, for instance, if you print your kids...
No, you are
Yes. Your assignments.
Yes.
You are using your company's resources.
Yes.
You must find out if it's acceptable. Do you think it's acceptable? It's a very good question. Do you think it's acceptable? No.
I think it's no. I think it's acceptable because if ever the company is financing you to study, they have to provide you with the resources to
study.
To assist you to achieve your goals.
Do you have a contract with your organization allowing you to study? Did they give you a paper? Did they say you're allowed to study? They're financing you.
Yes.
Just make sure of the fine print there. Nah. That's all I'm saying. We must be very careful if we use resources of the organization. It can be in the policy that you are not allowed, or that if it is, it depends then also on manager per manager. Just now you get a new manager, and it's all of a sudden it's not correct anymore. Very careful there. All right, so we're looking at the type of organizational frauds. There's 5 types, and it's my duty to inform you, and you have to inform yourself about that. Okay, identity theft. Identity theft is that, did you hear about that person who lost a laptop? He didn't have protection or security, like a password or something on it. And he lost all the database information of the clients of a big company. I'm not even going to name the name. But it was all over the news. And that person he was held accountable for that identity theft of all the clients because the information was open to hackers and crackers then to use. So you have to be very careful if you use a company laptop to also make sure that you've got your password protections on. And that it's your responsibility to make sure that the information is now safe. But you will know on that level, that person who lost that laptop, he knew that he had about 1 million people's personal details and ID numbers and everything on his computer. So when it was stolen, it was big news. Okay, so that's one of the things that you also must protect yourself against. If you carry that type of information on your PDA or your laptop or your tablet, make sure that you've got yourself backed up. Okay, that is identity theft, and you must also make sure that you've got the latest software there to protect your computer as well. Now, our top security menaces, there's a list of 10 attacks that is most likely to cause damage, malicious damage to your organization's information. That's on page 170. You see, that's why I'm not even going to read this because I've explained the use of laptop security. Okay. Number 17 is what is a rootkit, but this is one of the top cybersecurity issues. I'm going to list them quickly. If we use our browser vulnerabilities and we actually say that we are a trusted website and we actually access it, that is one of the top security menaces. If a botnet is let loose in your organization, if there is some organized espionage efforts on your information, mobile threats, as well as insider attacks, identity theft from persistent bots, increasing malicious spyware, and some of your web application security exploits, which is called the risk exposure of Web 2, which is your social networking. Web 2 is your social networking. Remember now Facebook and all those things that you actually integrate in your daily activities, okay? Then there's also your voice over internet protocol engineering, where they do social engineering to access you there, and blending phishing. Phishing is where people ask you for information, you think it's legitimate, you provide the information. Phishing attack. Make sure that you understand that definition as well. And then there's some supply chain attacks that's affecting your devices, such as your GPSs, and maybe nowadays it's also your portable devices that you carry around with you linked to the network. Okay, so that is all the review questions on. Then page 170 discuss a rootkit. On page 170, step number 2. All right, a rootkit is a set of network administration tools to take control of the network. All right, and it's making each infected system a member of a new type of botnet. A very, very malicious type of attack on your information in the organization. A rootkit attack. All right, so that's the top 10. The top 10 there, and then I've explained Web 2, because Web 2 is basically your social networking access and your user-supplied data that is linked to your social interaction on the web, all right? And hackers can ask, and others can ask you for information, but you cannot be trusted. Okay. Now I'm on page 171, security management practices. What do you need to do to make sure that you have managed your security in the organization? There's 6 objectives. The 6 objectives is on page 171 up until page 172. First of all, we need to do prevention and deterrence. Now, this is a very nice exam question, people, because this is the steps that you follow and that you also will find in your policy. And if it's not there, you have to tell your company that you didn't adhere to this type of defense strategy, all right? Basically, there is prevention and deterrence. Then there's detection. There's also containment, to contain the damage. Then there is recovery, correction, awareness, and compliance. Now, people, you've won a lot if you are aware. You've won a lot if you are aware. There's no way that you can say, okay, I didn't know about fraud or occupational threats or malware or botnets. That's why you study. That's why you must be aware. And you must make sure that you are up to date with the newest technology available to attack your information in your organization. And then that's the defense strategy. Then there's some controls that you need to actually can apply. There's application controls and there is access, or general controls. There's application controls and there's access controls. That's everything that you can do to make sure your information is kept safe. It's on page 172 to page 174. Let's quickly look at what is an access control or a general control. It is established to protect the system regardless of the specific applications. So it's safeguards that intend to protect your applications. Word, Excel, PowerPoint, Access, your basic macros in your software. Then there is access control. So it's a protection of who is authorized to use your resources. Can you log into the network? Do you have a password? Access controls. And then there is some biometric controls, which is on page 173. It's a part of access control. There's 4 examples. A biometric control is an access control. Remember, there's 2 categories: the application controls and the access, the general controls. We are now looking at access control as a general control. Okay. So it's an automated method of verifying the identity of a person via a physical or a behavioral characteristic. Did you see the banks usually used they used it for a while, testing it. You must put your thumbprint before you can access the door. That's a type of biometric control. Also the scanners in the eyes, where you scan, you've seen it in the Bond movies. Huh? Okay, so I'm not talking about anything that's strange to you, just make sure you know the terminology of that it's biometric. Okay. Thumbprints, fingerprints, retinal scan, voice scan, and even signature, digital signatures. All right. What is the general meaning then of intelligent agents? Now I'm on page 174. An intelligent agent is a type of application control. All right. It's also referred as a no-bot or a soft bot. And they are highly intended to actually intelligent to help in application, meaning applications that have some degree of reactivity. All right. So if we look on page 174, let's just get this a little bit explained. That's why I say you can't just rely on my answers here. It's very cryptic. Okay. Look in the book. It says sophisticated attacks are aimed at the application level. And many applications were not designed to withstand such attacks. So for better survivability, information processing methodologies are being replaced with agent technology. So intelligent agents is software to no-bots. It's software that helps you to save your work, to save it in the correct folder, to make sure it's been secured, that there's a password attached to it. Do you understand? So that's your intelligent agents that can help you with your information resources, and usually you won't know the name unless you are going through the policy documents. Okay. People, then we have some network access controls. They call it NIC products. It helps businesses to lock down the network against crime. That is on page 174 at the bottom. And there's 3 layers of network access control. Will you just make a note there on page 174? The 3 layers of network access control. Because this answer is giving me nothing. Do you understand? I mean, it's just a business lockdown of networks. That's NIC. But what's the 3 layers? The 3 layers there of network access control is your perimeter, then your authentication, and then your authorization layer. And that's at the top of page 175. All right, perimeter, authentication, authorization. And that means, that says it all right? Your firewalls is your perimeter security and so forth, and your passwords is your authentication, and your permissions is your authorization. Happy with that? Can I ask that question in the exam? Network access control. You can't just tell me it's a protection against your network access. You need to tell me why. Okay. So I didn't type it in there. I want you to visit page 174. Then I want you to also then define what is authentication and what does it do, and what is authorization and what is a firewall. Definitions there. I'm not reading through it, people. It's on page 175, 166, and also your web security, your wired equivalent privacy, WEP. You've seen that a lot with your mobile devices, all right? It's transmitted between 2 wireless devices, and its information needs to be secured between your wireless devices. Okay, so that is on page 176. A very important one is war driving. Okay, and some of you don't even know about this, but it's a very popular, where people know that there's maybe some internal breaches by human error. They use network wireless devices to actually drive through a neighborhood or area, and then they maliciously obtain free internet connections and possibly may gain access to your information in your organization. All right? So they rely on human mistakes there with war driving. Some people don't secure the information with a password, and then they can attack you. All right, so that's a closer look on page 5.6, question number 29. Now, I'm sorry if I go fast, student, but there's a lot of definitions to cover here, and I'm quickly going to, you must just try to follow me here. Okay, you will get access to these questions. Just remember to work with a book. Internal control and the role of IT with internal controls. Definitions, very, very important on page 177. If we look at compliance and internal controls, you will see that the internal control process is to achieve, it's designed to achieve reliability, operating efficiency, and compliance with laws as well as regulations and policies, and also to safeguard your assets. There's 5 functions for internal control. That's why there is internal control. All right? Now, what's the role of IT in internal control? That's on page 178. There's a nice table or figure 5.10 at the top there, page 178. It says there is a cost, a value, and a risk associated with internal control, and IT can help us with that. Okay? So the cost is that you have a return on your investment. The value is that you will gain competitive advantage, you will retain your higher revenue. The risk is that you have to safeguard your assets, and that if you safeguard something, people are most likely to try to get to it. Do you understand? All right, so that is some of the roles of IT in compliance and internal control. Now, how can internal controls then, this is answering also the student's question, there's some internal controls in place in every organization that can actually define the symptoms of a process that can make your information at risk. All right? And that's at the bottom of page 178. Let's just see. I'll get back to question 33. But we want to look at the 3 symptoms of red flags that fraud can be detected. It's missing documents, delayed bank deposits, holes in your records, numerous outstanding checks, disparity between accounts payable and receivable. Okay, so that's some of the internal controls. Red flags catch up. Okay, and that's where people find out that there's been a breach in information. Let's turn back to page 177 and let's just understand what is SOX. It's your section 302 to deter fraud. Now, people, please, you can, if you're not sure, you can Google this. And I call it basically your corporate and executive fraud verification system. And it's the best report that does not contain any untrue statement or omit any material. So that's at the bottom of page, did I say 177? The work atmosphere that the company sets for its employees must be actually consist of an anti-fraud law. And it forces better business reporting and disclosure between your general accepted accounting principles, violations, and it roots out fraud. Okay, there's some things that you need to actually verify in the South African context. But you can go and find out this internal control detection systems that is used in your organization. Okay. What is your base 2 accord recommends? Base 2 is on page 179. Organizations need a business base 2 imposes rigorous anti-fraud requirements for banks, all right? And it aims to promote enhanced risk management practices among large organizations, especially in the banking sector. So who of you are working in the banking sector? Maybe they don't call it the base 2 accord, but it's based on it. Okay, so in the banking sector, there's very rigorous controls for information. Then we also need a business continuity plan. All right, organizations need this plan because if a disaster strikes, you need to be able to continue work. You need to be able to make sure that you can outline a process to get back on your feet, otherwise you will bankrupt yourself, all right? So at the bottom of page 179, there must be continuity as well as disaster recovery planning, all right? And you need to be able to recover from a major disaster by having a plan. There's 3 issues that this plan should cover on page 80. Recovery planning, recovery from a total loss of capabilities, and to keep the business running after the disaster occurs. There's 2 factors that influence a company's ability to recover from a disaster, and that's on page 181. There's a section there that says IT at work. All right, and there we are. There's an example of the Watson Wyatt, which is the oldest actuarial firm in the world. And there's an example that explains to you how they recovered from a disaster. I'm not going to go into this case study because I want you to be able to discuss recovery plans with me, not case studies in the exam. All right? So you can please look at IT at work. Your planning should focus first on recovery and then it must identify procedures in the plan. What types of devices are needed for disaster avoidance? Now this is all on page 180 as well. Disaster avoidance. It's at the bottom of page 180. Let's see. It's an approach orientated towards prevention. It's the idea to minimize the chance of an avoidable disaster. For example, human-created errors. And you can also use something such as an uninterruptible power supply so that the information or your computer resources don't go down in the event of a power breakup. All right, a power outage. So that's some of the issues that you can use. And then we can also explain why a business continuity disaster recovery plan is not only security. It's not only about security. It's about the transmitting of vital accounting, project management, and transactional systems, as well as the facilities and the data loss. Despite you must be able to work despite of any disaster that can befall the company. All right. So it's not only a security issue. It's to be able to survive in the marketplace. All right. Question number 40. What is an auditing information system? An auditing information system helps you to basically act as an additional layer of safeguards to deter criminal actions, especially for sensitive information and insiders. And why should your websites be audited? It's a preventative measure and it's to prevent a legal risk. All right? I'm not going to expect you to do the formula for calculating your expected loss as a result of attack. But basically, there is a formula. Just make sure that you know that. It's expected loss is probability of attack times the probability of the attack being successful times the loss occurring if the attack is successful. So there is a formula that you can work out. Okay? And then there's some ethical issues associated with security programs. All right? The ethical issues is on page 182. There at the bottom, there's question 34, 45, 43, 44, 45. The last three questions is some about your ethical issues, as well as some of your wireless and mobile technology issues for security, and then also your doctrine of duty of care. So very important definitions there for mobile security and ethical issues also for handling information, as well as your wireless and mobile workforce securities. They call it doctrine of care. It's under this doctrine of duty care that senior managers and directors have a fiduciary obligation to use reasonable care to protect the company's business operations. Okay, so in your policy, make sure that you understand that doctrine of care and that you also apply to that protection of information in your organization. Okay, that's all I've got to say about this. There's a lot of definitions, as you can see. Make sure that you understand them. Remember, your exam is on these two issues. I think it's chapter 5 and 6. Next week I'll do chapter 6, but it's a combined exam. Okay, is there any questions on your side? Thank you for the students who did ask questions. If you really have problems with security, Google and ask your company for your policy documents. Any other questions? You are writing, you must look at the scheme of work. All right, I can tell you that these questions will be on the MyTutor as soon as possible, but you are still obliged to do the mind map as well as answering this question according to the chapter. I think you are writing, if I don't mistake, if you look at your controls in Information Administration 4, some of your subject content. Now, Information Administration 4. By this, I just want to say to you that you must follow your course content. Where is the course content? No, it's giving me problems here. People, just go to your course content and look at the scheme of work. I think it's in May. You will write somewhere in May. Information Administration 4. The control panel. Just the theory. Chapter 5 and 6, just theory. Okay, with this I want to conclude for the video purpose. I want to just conclude chapter 5. It was security and compliance of information in your organization. No other questions except for the exam date? Nothing else? Okay, thank you, students. Right. Now, I will give you a 2-minute break, but remember, it's just going to be a 2-minute break. Video. Just quickly sit down. Well, this is also new for us now, but we're trying to help you on the learning management system. Okay. I'm going to give your screens back to you just now. What I want to do, can we just sit down so that we can just start the recording? I want you to edit this when I say from when I say welcome. Okay. Thanks. Okay, students. This is just all right. Welcome, students, to Projects Tutorial 3. What we are going to do today is we are going to look at communicating project information. Now, as you know, it is a practical course. You are going to screen dump in the form of a portfolio, your work tonight. I've created a nice summary for you, and I want to just discuss the outcomes of this tutorial with you. Okay, so we are looking at communicating our project information. Remember what I said. For the exam, what did we do up until now? What did we do? We've created a new project. We've identified the task associated with the project, the time frame, the beginning and the end time. The budget we haven't looked at yet, but we've looked at what needs to be done. Now we want to communicate this information in various ways because we want to look at our Gantt chart and everything before we assign costs and resources and before we actually find out how much the project will cost. So if we want to communicate the project information, we need to look at the critical path. We are going to filter some tasks for, I'm talking now on page 1. We are going to filter tasks in this project for information according to a date range, according to an auto filter, and according to a custom auto filter. That is where we look at the filtering of tasks, and the critical path is very important because it's the shortest time, the longest time a task can be delayed before it starts influencing the end date, the finish date. And if you are delaying the finish date, you know that the project will cost extra money. You understand? You don't want to prolong the finish date or even the start date of the project because it's got cost implications. So we are looking at the critical path, and then we will filter and we will see what is on the critical path, what needs to be done quickly. And then we are going to look at some of the formatting options in MS Project, where we will change the color of the Gantt charts and so forth. And that is now on page 2 in this section here, number 3.4, where we are looking at formatting a project and looking at the time scale and in the different views where we can format the project. We will also look in detail at the network diagram because a network diagram can give you a graphical information view of the entire project. We will also look at how we can change the critical path, very important, to actually save us money. Okay? We can change the critical path by doing a few things. We can change the task dependencies. We can add negative lag. That will be explained in the practical session in detail. We can also change the type of dependency. We can change the calendars. Remember last week we changed the weekend calendars or the training calendars and our sort of our public holidays and things. And then we can also look at the constraints. Now, what is a constraint? You need to be able to understand that the constraints is finish to start, start to start, start to finish, and the next one is there's a few constraints now that you must be able to identify, and that is on page 188 of your book. All right. And then we want to look at the entire project in the timeline. So we've got a big task ahead of us, screen dumping, this screen dump. So what I can suggest is that you look at your practical book. What is screen dumped in your practical book? Maybe you should do the same. Okay. And then let's just try to finish tutorial 1. 3. In terms of tutorial 2, the only thing that we are going to skip is the work breakdown structure for the students who left earlier last week. All right? The work breakdown structure is not applicable for the exam. It won't be asked. It's just a way of numbering our project tasks. Okay. Any questions? All right. I'm going to give your screens back to you. This is the outcome tonight, is tutorial 3. Thank you, students. You can go to your respective classes now, no? Let me just give your screens back to you. Why is it not working? Oh, it was off. You've got it. I did upload this for you for projects. Can I just show you? Mrs. Thomas, Mrs. van der Westhuizen, Matty and me, we uploaded, we've uploaded the PowerPoints as well as the class notes, this notes. Do you see the lecture notes and the PowerPoint slides for projects? It's also on your content page. Okay. And another thing before we split up, in this week you will find in the content link, you will see there's a research report due in June. I'm going to report on the topic, but the layout and everything is there. I will report on the topic ASAP, all right? And it will be for next semester, the first week also in the new semester, after the holidays. Okay.